everything's your fault. And it truly is. This is a really big concept that took me a long, long time to understand. And when you embrace this, it comes back to, that was the reason I was bringing up Joe Dispenza and the subconscious stuff, because everything is truly your fault. If you are a person that likes to argue or have a victim mentality, you're going to create situations subconsciously to happen in your reality. And when you interact with other people in your reality, that are going to trigger situations to happen that your body is subconsciously forcing you to have happen, because literally your brain is addicted to the chemicals that get released during these situations happening. And that's when you get into toxic relationships, or like I said, victim mentalities, where people always feel the world's out to get them, and everything's never their fault, but the whole world's conspiring against them, and they're like, fuck, why is everything happening to me? And it's because they're creating that reality, and that's their thought process, and that's their subconscious leading them into situations. Because what happens, our subconscious is controlled by our ego, and our ego doesn't like to be wrong. So our ego will put us in situations to make itself right. It's like me sitting here telling you that this shirt is white, even though it's clearly it's black. And for whatever reason, my ego is trying to tell me it's white. And you guys are like, Chris is crazy. Like, no matter how much I tell him, he's just going to keep thinking it's white. Or a better example, more realistic, is like a friend that always complains about his girlfriend, or they always break up, but then get back together. But then he wants to come tell you about it time after time after time after time after time again. And it's like, okay, bro, you're my friend. The first time or two, maybe even 3 times, I get it. It's tough. But we're going on a year and a half now, and every 2 months you're coming at me with the same shit. I don't have time for your problems anymore, and I've had this happen to me, to where the same friend group all had the same issue with this one person. And then after about a year, we're all like, we would see each other here or there, like, man, so and so just won't stop, like, I'm getting pissed. I got to tell him to stop talking to me about it, because he's not doing anything to solve it. So my point is, when people don't take responsibility for things, they put the power outside of themselves, but B, the whole reason they're doing those things in the first place is because subconsciously you're addicted to the chemicals that are being released, and your subconscious is also trying to make your ego right. So it's going to subconsciously make you feel ways and say things and do things that will potentially sabotage, not work in your favor. And those are the things that when you look back on, you're like, damn, I shouldn't have said that, or what was I thinking? Like these things where you're acting out of emotion and you're acting out of ego. And what happens is, it's not your fault. It's the fault of your subconscious making these interactions happen to trigger these chemical results. So it's just like, you can go, or let's say cigarettes, like if you know that you can go down to the store and buy some cigarettes, your addiction will put subconscious reasons for you to be like, oh, I need to go get milk, or I need to go do this. Like, you'll have a force that's driving to go do this, because you're addicted, right? And you have to really change your mindset subconsciously to remove that addiction. And so everything that we're in life, even if it's not bad things or quote unquote bad things like cigarettes or drugs or alcohol, whatever, you can be addicted to anything. We know this. Caffeine, you can be addicted to arguing, you can be addicted to
sleeping in.
Yeah, there's even addictions to being overly optimistic, being too positive. Like people that don't necessarily understand all this, manifestation stuff, but they just hear about it and they just think, oh, if I'm just positive all the time, everything will work out. And it's not true. It's not that simple. This stuff is simple in a way, but you have to understand all the concepts and really embrace it in your daily life. You have to like really embrace it, and not just superficially embrace it to just be able to talk about it, at a party and act like you're cool, and because you're woke. I guess that's what they call it these days, and it's not trying to be like that. It's literally trying to be like understanding reality and life and the universe, so that you can actually benefit from it the most. A quick hack to doing this is taking full responsibility for everything. Nothing is anyone else's fault. It's always your fault. And the reason I say that is because if you trace it back to everything coming from a thought, and we've talked about this on other videos, if you think about, everything starts with a thought at first. And the concept, just like behind me, all the trees and the mountains and the birds, all that stuff, us, our human potential, our minds, our bodies, all this stuff, that's all from God. Anything else after that, this lighter, this microphone, this computer, this phone, anything else comes from a thought. It comes from our mind. And that's where the convergence of God and the universe become reality, in terms of, we have the universal creator, which is sometimes referred to as God, or in other religions they have their own names, etc. But again, it all boils down to the same science, and religions just happen to package it up differently, and put certain rules around it, and different appearances to for whatever their motives are. But when you peel all of it away, it's all the same operating system underneath. It's all the same computer code underneath. So if you embrace everything being your fault, and there's probably a certain level of, when I first said it, or without me fully explaining it yet, you're probably maybe trying to counter argue that even. And you're probably like, well, or maybe think of things that aren't your fault, that would negate my statement here. And if you really truly take it back to thought, it's never going to happen, because again, whether it's a conscious thought or a subconscious thought, it's going to literally manifest itself in your reality, whether it's subconsciously and you don't even know it, and you happen to just, it could be as little as just the attitude you have to how you choose to reply to a statement. Someone could say something, and the way you come off, your body language, your tonality, all that could just tell them right away, like, oh, I don't want to deal with this guy. Or the opposite, it could be like, oh, this guy's really genuinely cares about this situation. Let's figure out a solution or whatever. And you can be in any situation and kind of have whatever desired outcome happens. But the moment you decide to act a certain way, you chose to take that path. So the moment you choose to be disrespectful, there's no coming back from that, and I'm sure if you haven't done it yourself, you've seen someone do it at a restaurant or at a store, where they have that sense of entitlement, like, I'm a paying customer, what do you mean you can't do this, or whatever. And it causes a level of disrespect to, now the clerk is just like, you know what, I don't even care who you are, like, now I'm not even going to serve you, or they're going to go out of their way to be a dick to you, and now you're trying to get a favor from them, basically. So it kind of, your attitude, just initially, the way your body language is, your tonality, anything like that can literally steer that conversation from this direction to that direction. And all that tonality, that thought, everything happens because of the ego, your subconscious. And your subconscious and your ego are let's say, like, chiseled away, like their essence is created by your past experiences. You know what I mean? So everyone's going to be completely different. Nobody's going to be the same whatsoever. And so what bothers you might not bother me. I've even had people get bothered about things that should bother me that don't bother me. And I tell them to calm down because they're bothered that I'm not bothered. And, or, I've had in high school, this one kid would always want to fight people no matter what. He'd just be like, oh, bro, that's my homie, like, and so he would always try to, like, I would have a car, we would always be driving around, and he'd be like trying to find ways of, like, people trying to start shit. And I'd be like, bro, just chill out. Like, don't jump out of the car and, like, start trying to fight these dudes. You're going to fucking make me look bad now. You know what I mean? But he was thinking it was like, that was his job. It was his duty. Like, he was doing a good thing for people, but he was really just subconsciously creating those realities for himself. And then that led to other issues, like getting in trouble, getting, expelled, stuff like that. So all these things, but you could trace it back, like, no, it was that kid's fault for doing this and that. He, robbed my friend. He, did this or that, whatever. And ultimately, though, it comes down to your decision on how you're going to react, what you're going to do. What makes it okay for you to do something bad to someone else just because they did it bad to you doesn't mean that now you're going to come down to their level, that's going to lower your vibration and lower your ability to interact properly where you're trying to be at. And I'm not trying to say to be a pushover or anything. Like, there are times where you need to stand up for yourself and defend yourself for sure. And, even down to physical self-defense. And this is also a big concept to understand that we'll talk about another time. But ultimately, if you have the humbleness and you can have the understanding with your ego to understand that everything is your fault, you can then look at those situations that you don't like or you don't have outcomes from that are in your favor that you wanted to have happen, and kind of reanalyze them and see, how can I pull from this? What was my fault from this? And how can I change that? And truly be honest about that, because that's going to be the hard part. You can lie to yourself year after year after year. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to Brett. It doesn't matter to anyone else, your parents, anybody. But, if you're not going to do the work and be consistent, you're not going to have the results. And that's not going to affect my life. It's just going to affect your life. So if you want to have the results quicker, this is a good way to understand. Like, if you start looking at every single situation in your life, and even the good things, it's still your fault, in a sense. Like, you caused it to happen, and not in a bad way either. So it gives you hope from the flip side. It's not just all about like everything bad that happens in your life is because of you. It is, but also everything good in your life happens because of you too. So when you understand these two opposites, that's actually a hermetic principle. There's 7 hermetic principles to the universe, and these come from Egypt. But one of them is the principle of polarity. And there's always a polar opposite to everything in the universe. Male, female, hot, cold, winter, summer, spring, fall. Like, there's always a 180-degree opposite. So you're never really, that's why when you go back to, like, you can have any outcome happen in a situation, but it all is going to stem from that initial thought of how you're going to handle it, because that just dictates the next thought, and the next thought, and the next. And once you go down these paths, like, think if you ever argue with a girl or something, and you say something that you don't mean, or that you say it to just be mean to her or something like that, or whatever, but then you feel bad after and you try to take it back and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, I was just upset, blah blah blah. It doesn't matter. She can still apologize to you, and you can still move on, but you still said that thing, and it can still affect her over time. It can still, now she can become subconscious about it. It could turn into this big thing, affect your relationship further. Like, and I've had things like this happen, and I've had to learn these things the wrong way, the hard way, I mean. But all I'm trying to say is, it's true what they say with words being powerful in both ways. Again, negative and positive. Your words being powerful can create your reality, and that's going to cause whether the good things or the bad things happening to you. And so all your thoughts on a daily basis majority are all subconscious. So if you really want to master your life and master your reality, you really have to do the work in your subconscious, and there's ways to do this. And it really mostly all starts with self-reflection, identifying, understanding, coming to terms with, like, the things that are there. And it's actually easier than you may think to fix a lot of these things. All it really takes is identifying that and consciously saying, like, I want to do this. I want to make this change, or I want to become this type of person. And it's really not much more than that. And then, like I said, you just do little things each day by day, and some of it you don't even realize you're doing, but if you reflect back on it, you see how, like, certain things you're doing are playing into these goals that maybe you didn't even consciously realize at that point in the day that you're doing, but they all apply. And so when I look back now, I've refined my goals down to where I know with this set of goals, it pretty much covers my whole entire spectrum of wants and needs for the near future and even the long-term future. And as I go through them every night, I see at least, I'd say 70 to 80%, I can attribute something in my day, even if it's the smallest thing as a phone call or just a conversation, I can attribute it to that particular goal. And so I can go through all my goals except for maybe 3 or 4, or except for maybe 30%, that I would say I practice detachment of outcome from today. And not that that's a bad thing, but it's just, you're reflecting, you're basically just, it's like a progress report, like a update, like saying, okay, this is what happened today, this is the summary. And it's like I did this today, which played into this goal. This goal, I did this and this for. This goal, I didn't really think about much. I didn't do much. So I practiced detachment of outcome from that goal. And again, it doesn't matter if you're consciously thinking about it or not, or consciously doing something towards it that day in particular. It's more about seeing the stuff that you did do, and especially realizing the stuff that you didn't realize you were doing. And then this goes back to last week's call as well. Like with your goals, it's not just going to happen just by writing it down and saying you wanted to do it. You also need to have the ambition and the action to put into it. And the action comes down to these daily reflections. You're actually seeing these little actions go into your plan. And that's the same thing as fueling your faith. So now your faith can become more and more on these concepts.